Homemaking is much like motherhood, where you have to embrace the seasons that you're in. Goodness gracious, we are enjoying the break in the weather. We're enjoying the food changes. We're kind of tired of soups and stews and things like that. And we're embracing fresh produce and some different kind of treats and some new meals around here. And I'm just realizing I have an almost 1-year-old and an almost 15-year-old. And the saying is so true that the days are long and the months and years are short. And I'm realizing we have dwindling time with our teenagers, it feels like. The break in the weather and trying to come up with some new meals and new routines a little bit, and trying some old favorites and some new meals. And I'm kind of behind in my yearly routine of having the freezer stocked with some baked goods and things like that I would normally do in the winter, because spring and summer we start to be outside. We're still looking for a home, so lots of house hunting and taking walks at the park and things like that, that we're out of the house more. So I want to have more items in the freezer that I can pull from, whether that's some bagels and other bread products. I'd like to get some tortillas and some bagels and focaccia and different things in the freezer so I can just pull from them and not stress on really busy days, or as a large family going out to eat can, at a fast food restaurant, can cost us like $80. And it's of course way healthier to be at home. But if I can do my duty of prepping meals, then we aren't forced to break the budget and break our healthy eating habits, and stocking things in the freezer when the produce is going bad, or when something's looking a little sad and we don't want to eat it fast enough. When we have leftovers, often I just reheat them for lunch the next day. But since I'm trying to stock the freezer, I can pack up individual serving sizes, and then I can get them out for my lunches, or do a smorgasbord type of a lunch where everyone can choose something that they want, and then everyone's happy. But this keeps my kitchen low to no waste, and also making sure that I have easy meal ideals in the freezer. And I mentioned this in my recent video with my bulk meat purchase. I decided this time to get my pork unseasoned, because the last couple times it's just the seasoning's been off and really salty. So I have a really good tried and true breakfast mixture that I make when I make biscuits and gravy. So I just made a big batch of that, and I'll use it when I make sausage for breakfast. Still looking for a good Italian sausage mixture, but I did go ahead and bulk this up. It uses nutmeg and sage and fennel. I do a mixture of fennel seeds and ground fennel, salt and pepper. I can leave in the description the recipe for my bulk sausage. I made a big batch of this, so again, it saves me time in the kitchen, and I'm not doing it every single time that I'm getting my sausage out. And then mixing that up and putting in just a small pint jelly jar, and then I'll keep it up with my spices labeled. When it comes to spring and summer, I like to just have a designated kitchen day, which that day might change per week, what day of the week it is. But because we want to be outside and there's other projects going on and things like that, I don't want to be stuck in the kitchen like I don't mind to in the winter, because I'm baking, I'm warming up the house. We're just in a different season of eating. But when it comes to spring and summer, we're looking for quicker meals or stuff that's already half prepped. And I'm starting to get back into that routine of trying to have one or a half a day, twice a week, to just kind of meal prep and get ahead a little bit. Whether that is something to add to the freezer, or whether that's baking our bread and granola, or prepping for the freezer. Like I'm doing here, we still have some squashes and potatoes that have been in season at the store, and instead of buying canned pumpkin to make some pumpkin muffins for the freezer. I'm just baking up this butternut squash, and we'll use pumpkin pie spices to kind of mask the squashy flavor. And using up, and since I made those bagels yesterday, I decided to do kind of like Panera does with their flavored cream cheeses. I had bought a box of cream cheese from Costco last month, and we didn't go through it as much and as fast as I thought we would. So I decided to go ahead and do not one, but 2 flavors of cream cheese. And this first one is just a simple chopped pecans, which I could have toasted, but I didn't. Some cinnamon and just a little touch of honey. And I did lay out the cream cheese just enough to soften it, but it was still pretty cold, to mix it up, and then I can put it back into a container into the fridge. And the next flavor is using some frozen strawberries that we had picked last year, and I'm on my last bag of them, but I thought it'd be fun to do a nice bright fruit flavored also. So what I'm doing here is first I have to cook down the strawberries, and then I go through and use my immersion blender, because some of my family does not like the really jammy texture. And then since it was a little bit runny, I didn't want to add arrowroot powder. What I did was beef gelatin, which does thicken it, but it also gives it a little bit of nutrition. If you've been around here, you know I'm always trying to add nutrition to our meals. So I only did about 1.5 teaspoons, mixed it up, and then I just let it sit there while it cooled enough before I mixed it with the cream cheese. The strawberries turned out to be harder to mix with the cream cheese than the other flavor, but we got it to work. And then of course nothing goes to waste, so I put the rest of the strawberry with beef gelatin into a jar, and we ended up using this on biscuits and sandwiches later. So of course nothing goes to waste. I have been getting low on yeast, and for the last 2 months at Costco, they have not had the yeast, and I haven't had to purchase it at a grocery store for a long time. And since I knew I was getting low, I have just been making a lot of sourdough focaccia, which has been great because it goes really good with soups to dip in. And now that it's turning to spring, we have been using it to make sandwiches, and it's also really great to have it you cut it open-faced and make some focaccia pizza. And since it freezes really well, I've been doing that too, and just making a bunch to freeze, and we keep pulling it out. So I need to stock up, but it's also something I've been making because I am getting low on yeast, and I don't know if anyone else is having that problem, or if not, where you buy your yeast in bulk, because I'm going to Costco again this week. And honestly, I'm hoping that they have some, because if not, I'm going to have to figure out where to get it. But like most recipes, it uses sourdough flour, salt, olive oil, and it's a sourdough recipe, so it does sit and ferment and get bubbly. I just make a plain recipe, but you can flavor it with rosemary and different things. My children really like when I do a molasses topping. I just basically, after it ferments, before it goes in the oven, I just drizzle it with molasses. It's a really unique flavor, but that's not something that we usually put on sandwiches. So I had ground more spelt than I was using in my baking today, so I always like to put it in the fridge, because since it is the whole grain, it can start to go rancid faster. And I'm not sure how long it honestly lasts if you just leave it out on the counter. I know when you buy all-purpose flour from the store, all that nutrients that can go bad is taken out. That's why it's not as nutrition if you get all-purpose flour from the store. But I do grind it, use what I have, because when it comes out from the grinder, it is warm. So when you're making something like sourdough or trying to make bread, it's great to use it straight from the grinder because it's warm, so it warms up your yeast, or it gets your sourdough active a little faster. And then whatever I don't use, I just let it cool down a little bit, and then I'll move it to a container and into the fridge for any baking for the rest of the week, or to add to puff pancake or any kind of recipe that I would need more flour for. So it doesn't ever go longer than a week in my fridge, but I'm not technically sure how long it could last. In the fridge, I'm assuming lasts longer because it slows down things, but I'm not. The best compliment you can get from your family is their request of a certain food that you make. It just warms my heart. But I've also realized as my children have gotten older, they want to learn in the kitchen, and there are times in our math book that it asks us to make a recipe, and some children don't mind, but some children insist on making a recipe. And this one was an absolute fun one. It was basically a pumpkin cake donut, which they called it something else. This was a good reminder that it's always good to try new recipes because it was so good. It was like the traditional cake donut, and then the glaze just added just a hint of sweetness that you kind of needed for it. And it's definitely gotten written down and added to the recipe book. But it came out of our math book with a child demanding to make it. And it was a fun experiment that she learned all about math, and we all got to have a tasty treat. And then, like I said, with spring and summer coming, I'm trying to do my best on prepping myself ahead. So there are times that I'll make biscuits, but I'm also making a dry mix batch to keep on hand. I've been doing this recently with biscuits, with a pancake mix, with my dry ingredients for my granola, and it just saves me that much more time in the morning when I go to make it, that I already have it kind of half ready. And if I have a children helping in the kitchen on my kitchen day, it's easy for them to follow the recipe and to help me make these batches up. After wanting for years to find a granola that's not just loose, crumbly oatmeal, I finally found one. And I have to say thank you, Meg from Holler Homestead, for the granola recipe, because I have made so many batches of it. It's the perfect consistency, and when you bake it, you can mix it up like a traditional granola, but I find if I just leave it and let it cool down, I can break it into the big or small chunks that we all like. And I now officially have a granola jar. Instead of a cookie jar, we have a granola jar, and everyone comes in and snacks on it. It's so fun. So another change in our eating habits and how we're going to roll into spring and summer with these kinds of foods. I'd love for you to leave a comment with a favorite recipe or a favorite meal that you love for spring, and I will see you soon.